Rebecca.
外の奴らが交渉したいって。
Oh, she knows who it is. She'll recognize.
大丈夫よ。通してあげて。信用できる人物だわ。
Hey. Man, I'm gonna miss his score so much.
今しばらくご辛抱ください。
そう。そうですよね。
This lady. Oh.
立てるかい。逃げるよ。
ああ、逃げられんよ。お前たちはすでに私の腹の中だ。
Oh. Wow.
5体満足かどうかは保証せんがね。
And his hands as well, of course. Ugh. The sacrifices they made.
そこの目玉まみれさん。不老不死なのですよね。
Alkahestry, right?
否定しませんか、アルフォンス様。あれは私がもらいます。
ちょっと、あれは一人じゃ無理だよ。
いえ、私には練炭術があります。お二人には小さい方のホムンクルスをお任せします。
The smaller, yeah. I was gonna say, yeah. Ah. There must have been a price, a toll, right?
私を連戦に巻き込んだ時、奴はこの手は使いたくなかったが仕方ないと言った。奴らにとってハイリスクってことか。
Ooh. And so it begins.
今まで黒い影でかわしてきたのに。
いけっかもしんねえぞ。
不老不死、いただきます。
Whoa. Look at this.
ダメだお嬢さん。こいつはノーモーションで。
Oh. This is crazy.
どうなっているんだ。
市内各所にイシバール人が出没。
Infested.
憲兵隊の貴様。
Ah.
それ。
The counter circle, perhaps, or parts of it, or plans of it.
この家、この場所で間違いないですか。
They've got to get to certain points. Oh, yes.
みるみる暗くなっていく。みんなうまく
I just got chills to see the Schwallens playing a part here. Oh my god.
間違いない。さて、頼んだぞ。スカ。
Cool. Oh.
こうして死に直面するというのはいいものだな。純粋に死ぬまで戦ってやろうという気持ちしか湧いてこん。地位も経歴も生まれも人種性別名前何もいらん。何者にも縛られず誰のためにでもなくただ戦う。なんと心地よい。やっとたどり着いた。どうした。これが貴様の本気か。全くもって。
Look at this. He wants him to be at his best.
私を壊してみせろ。名もなき人間よ。
He wants a formidable, final potential opponent. But he's also kind of egging him on as well, right? Scott has to be careful. Oh. Bradley is taking some damage here, man.
信じられんといった顔だな。そうだろう、俺がこんなものを使うなど。
Oh.
少し前まで俺自身も想像していなかった。自分に何ができるかをずっと考えていた。そしてこれにたどり着いた。
Oh my god.
我が兄の研究所から得た最高築の錬成人だ。
どこまでもあがきよろ人間め。
どうしたどうした、随分のれい攻撃じゃねえか。勘違いしないでください。あなたは役目を終え
I
るまで
cannot truly hurt
して
you.
やらってか。身は小柄だから自分より大きいものとばかり戦ってきた。つまり自分より小さいものと戦った経験が少ない。確かに俺はでけえのとばかり戦ってきた。だからこそ
I know how a smaller opponent's going to think.
チビの攻撃パターンはわかるんだよ。
Look at this. The tide's kind of turning again. For now. Oh my god.
遊びはここまでだ。働いてもらうぞ人柱諸君。私を中心へ連れて行け。早くしろ。飲み込まれる。
Oh god. Beautiful. Oh.
時は来た。
Whoa. Goosebumps.
お前たちはこの星を一つの生命体と考えたことがあるか。いや、生命というよりはシステムというべきか。お前たち人間一人の情報量などとは比べようもない。その扉を開けたら一体どれほどの力を手に入れられるか考えたことがあるか。
Maybe you could become the perfect being. Oh my god. Oh my god.
世界の中心は俺のものだ。俺は世界を手に入れる。やった。
I think it's a temporary speed bump, but Greed, prepare yourself.
来ると思っていたよ。我が息子グリード。
Oh no,
お前
no.
は私から生まれた強欲だからな。
So yeah, of course he expected it.
私が欲しいものはお前も欲しいものな。
So it's quite predictable for him, right?
世界の中心はここだ。
Oh.
これはそうだ。扉同士戦い、反発し合い。素晴らしいエネルギーだ。この私が抑えるだけで精一杯ではないか。
Whoa. I have nothing to say. I'm just speechless at the moment.
手してこの星の扉を開ける。
Chills. Oh. No, don't show me this.
ウィンリー。何これ。 戻ったら
I'm gonna smack you.
殴ってやる
Oh God. Whoa. Whoa. This imagery though.
神よ我が魂に応えよ来い
Jeez. Look at this.
そうだ来いもう貴様に縛られ続ける私ではない地に引きずり下ろし我が身の一部にしてくれよ
All right, folks. Episode 60. Yeah. Incredible. Incredible. Much like right now, I was kind of speechless for a long portion of that ending sequence once it kicks in. And honestly, I felt like there's not much to add, or I could add at that moment in terms of commentary. And it felt that at that moment, I just need to sit back and take this in. It was gripping, captivating, momentous, utterly relentless and unforgiving in its assault, full-on assault on the senses. I like to use this term from time to time. It grabs you by the scruff of the neck and it keeps you there right till the ending. Right? It holds you there. I mean, the moment that eclipse comes into play and then Father or the dwarf puts it into motion, I mean, from that point on, it is just something really special. It really is, right? And I've got to say, some of my all-time favorite imagery of this anime and anime in general kind of comes out of this episode. A lot of it in that final moment, or in those final moments, or in that final sequence. All of that cosmic horror and just the scale, the immense scale of the things that have been put into motion. Again, jaw-dropping. Baffling, incomprehensible. You're looking at it and you're just thinking, holy shit. Like, the scale of this is just insane, right? It's at that point now, they've been setting this up. They've been kind of alluding to these kind of things. The mad lad actually did it, right? I mean, it's certainly in that stage of it. Of course, all of us know it is going to be countered. And ultimately, I think it is going to be rejected in some manner, right? But the point being, he got to this point. The dwarf in the flask made this happen. At least he got to this point, or it got to this point. And that feels just insane. But yeah, like I said, they've been setting it up and alluding to this, potentially striking down God and becoming this perfect being. He put it into motion, and then some. But also, it should be noted that this eye in the sky, this God, no response, right? I mean, the lines of dialogue here are just incredible throughout the episode, be it King Bradley, Wrath, be it the dwarf in the flask. I believe at one point he said something along the lines of, "Hear the cry of my soul," right? But again, no response. Yes, it appears that the dwarf in the flask in this form is pulling that entity towards himself or itself. But ultimately, I do think he has something else coming, for sure, in these final 4 episodes, or perhaps in the next few episodes, right? But the thing is, I was actually kind of enjoying it, right? Because ultimately, I do know, he's going to be defeated, right? Or kind of, countered. But, I cannot deny that I was enjoying that part of it. Right? Because it's this indisputable fact that many of us, members of the audience, enjoy this type of character or these types of characters, darker characters. That's just how it is. It's human nature. That's how a lot of us are. I'm sure many of you felt the same at this moment. There is this something, I don't know, something seductive and something enticing about this character specifically, the dwarf in the flask, actually managing to get to this point. There just is, right? A lot of us are drawn to these types of characters, darker characters, or characters that are kind of considered the bad guy, right? Hell, those are some of the most compelling characters in any story. Fictional ones, of course, right? Let's make that clear. Fictional characters of that sort are just so compelling. And I think storytelling or stories kind of give us or provide us this safe haven to indulge in these types of characters. Some could even argue that it's actually us, the audience, exploring a bit of our darker side, our shadow selves, right? The part of us that kind of carries the forbidden emotions and urges, right? But storytelling, fiction, safely allows you to kind of indulge in that. Fictional characters allow you to kind of indulge in that, right? I hope I'm not coming off as a psycho at this moment. I get the feeling that you kind of understand my point on this. I'm sure many of you understand. Listen, Tony Soprano, for example, I don't want to get into spoilers, but for those who know, there's traits there that many of us recognized, right? Even the most sinister of these evil characters or bad guys do possess traits that are recognizable. A lot of times these types of characters tend to live freely, unconstrained by rules and obligations, right? I mean, for all their flaws, they understand who they are. These characters tend to understand who they really are. Again, that's not a blanket statement because, in the case of the dwarf in the flask, the notion of kind of being unconstrained by the rules and obligations, in this case, it wants to be free from the human experience, being bound by the human experience, being bound by God, right? It wants to be more than human. And for that reason, of course, it sheds everything that makes it human, right? Or it believes it's shedding everything that makes him human or makes it human, right? In the form of the sins, its children. But ultimately, at the end of the day, he was made from a human, right? This being cannot escape that. It was made from a human. He comes from a human. Or he was possible because of, the DNA or the blood of a human. It was crucial in giving that being life in this capacity, right? To exist in the human world. So yeah, ultimately I do think this arrogance is going to be punished somehow, in a sense, for sure. That ultimately it is futile for it to think that it could be that perfect being. It could be more than human. Or the consequences of the human experience, rather, and the consequences of being bound by God, right? It wants to escape all of that, be above all of that. It's insane to see that circle, the nationwide circle, initiate, come into play. It's a stunning sight. It's an incredible sight. Of course, it's really quite haunting as well, given the imagery that's on display. Showcasing all of the characters that all of us have come to love so much, falling in the process, even if it is temporarily, right? It's a tough sight, nonetheless. But, of course, a lot of these countermeasures are going to come into play as well, right? There's a lot of good setup there. Right? So for that reason, I was really able to enjoy this moment I really was. I feel like I might have been smiling at moments as it's going down. I'm not sure. I'll have to check out my reaction in post as I edit. I kind of want to go through the whole process, right, step by step, and let's see if I can kind of nail this. I'm sure I might get something wrong here, and it might be explained anyways in the next few episodes, but the whole process of him ultimately kind of getting to God's portal, right? So at the beginning, of course, the 5 sacrifices are crucial. Their energy specifically is crucial, right, for opening, I suppose, the central gate, right? Then, of course, because of that, the nationwide gate is opened, right? And then the next step is to open the portal of the world, right? And then, of course, opening that and then also using the energy from millions and millions of people allows him to kind of gain that immense knowledge, that infinite knowledge, right? And that plays a part in him being able to open God's portal and then ultimately pulling God in to strike God down, right? Towards becoming a perfect being. I feel like ultimately the mechanics of that, right, or the exact process of that isn't like the most important in the grand scheme of things, But yeah, I've got 4 episodes and I've got a immediate follow-up to this episode that might actually explain more about this process, right? The things he put into motion and how some of these things are possible. But yeah, I'm just kind of brainstorming. I'm trying to kind of go through the different phases of it. And I love how it was presented. It was presented in that manner, step by step, stage by stage, ultimately at a cosmic level. Oh my goodness, the dread that builds up as it's playing out. My God, it was just so memorable. It's one of the most memorable moments of this anime and anime in general so far, right? In my experience of anime. But yeah, let's kind of focus on some of the build-up, right? Because ultimately it does kind of feel like it was leading up to that moment, and that moment certainly kind of dominates a lot of this episode. It almost kind of makes you forget everything that happened before, again, given the immense scale of it, right? Everything else almost felt, I hate to say it, but inconsequential even. Not in the sense that, I don't care about it anymore, but like once it gets to that level, right? It's just, I don't know, it's just mind-breaking in a sense, isn't it? Because I do care about some of the things that happened earlier, mainly Scar and King Bradley, Wrath. Some of the fight sequences, great fight sequences, of course, Scar and Bradley going at it, but that appears to be in its final stages as well, given the big reveal. And listen, I'll be honest, I didn't actually even clock it as something different happening on screen. I just kind of, I don't know, I didn't realize that he's doing something he hasn't done before. But a few seconds later, it did become clear. Oh, he just did something a little bit different. Oh shit, he just performed reconstruction alchemy. And then, of course, then immediately in my mind, I'm like, oh, let me see that other arm. And then, of course, the big reveal. He takes it off, the garment, the jacket that he has on, and shows us the other arm. It comes full circle. It's complete. It serves as the ultimate conclusion, or the perfect conclusion to this phenomenal character arc, one of the best of the entire series of this story. Scar and his journey to finding himself again, to letting go of his wrath, or rather channeling that wrath into something a bit more constructive. My goodness, Scar, it's easily one of my favorites of this entire story. That character arc, development, that progression, it's just top notch. It really is. Going from the source of destruction, a path of destruction, of vengeance, to kind of going to the source of reconstruction as well. Accepting that alchemy, accepting or reconnecting with his brother and his faith as well. And, kind of realizing or understanding that, yes, his faith and alchemy can function together. And then, of course, there's that whole concept of him actually being up against the embodiment of pure wrath, right? Going up against wrath. And this time, wrath in its truest form. I mean, that was fascinating to see King Bradley kind of drop all of that, drop all of the, I don't know, not a facade, but some of the limitations that are being put on him up until this point. The only thing I feel is the pure sensation telling me to fight to the death. It feels so good. I finally arrived. Yeah, this is truly wrath. And I think I actually get to see him kind of scream, that primal scream, for the first time, really. You just don't see King Bradley like this, right? It's the first time. And as he stated himself, it feels good. It feels good. My goodness. So this is it. It's the final stand. It's the final showdown. Once it kind of gets back to it, hopefully, I suppose. But yeah, he is on his last legs, isn't he? He's taken so much damage, and then of course now he kind of gets surprised by, Scar's alchemy. He was really quite shocked, as Scar pointed out as well. That look on your face, unbelievable. My goodness, there's so much going on here, right? And yeah, it is really, really quite fitting that it is these two going toe to toe. Damn. And then, of course, you've got May stepping up to fight against the dwarf in the flask, fearless, right? Because, she believes her alchemy gives her a bit of an edge, right? Especially in comparison to some of the other alchemists that are around at that point, right? She tells them to go after the small one. But yeah, the small one is falling apart. But, maybe at just the right moment, he just kind of needs to hold on for a bit longer, and he does kind of hold on for a bit longer. It just kind of felt like the homunculi are kind of trying to get through the last bit of this time before it is time, right? To keep them at bay long enough, keep them occupied, ultimately. But yeah, it was a great scene nonetheless, the fight sequence there. And then, of course, the surprising and exciting entrance of Greed, right? Though, of course, it wasn't much of a surprise for the dwarf in the flask, because it's his greed. He knows himself. He knew it's coming. I actually thought that might be the end of Greed at that point. As you saw, I was kind of expecting something kind of heartbreaking at that moment, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen. But, that being said, Greed is still there. So let's see. Let's see how it all plays out. Everything I want, you will want as well. As he speaks to Greed, or with Greed. Yeah. Think of all the things Greed wanted. It's all applicable to Father, because it is Father. It is the dwarf in the flask. And I have mentioned it a few times in my post-episode discussions that everything you need to know about the dwarf in the flask, Father, you learn from the sins, the homunculi, its children, because that's Father. That's how you really get to understand Father. So it really is quite the fascinating and effective approach by Arakawa to give the character of the dwarf in the flask, or Father, characterization in this manner through the sins that are extracted from the being that is the dwarf in the flask, because it feels that it needs to rid itself of these human-like features, things that could separate it from humans, because it feels that it's above humans. It wants to be more than human, right? It doesn't want to be chained or bound by the consequences of the human experience, like I mentioned earlier. And then also lastly, this point about the dwarf telling Greed that everything I want, you want as well. So I know exactly how you're going to act or act out. But let's not forget that ultimately there is a conscious desire and the unconscious desire, the inner desire as well. So there could be something more there. There could be something that could be surprising about Greed to Father, to the dwarf in the flask, right? So let's see, because they're not just going to bring Greed back in at that point to not do anything. There is something that is about to happen here through the character of Greed, I believe at least. But yeah, that should do it for this one, folks. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you're interested in early access to the next few episodes right now, or perhaps even timer-based full length, consider checking out the Patreon page. The links are in the description and the pinned comment. Also links to social media, if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for episode 61. Until then, take it easy.